So at its core, Hypertask is essentially the attempt to fix task-based communication. Obviously, the big problem with Slack and using Slack in conjunction with the project management tool is the communication is scattered, and you basically have the communication not only in Slack, but also in the project tool, and nobody ever knows where things are. So there's no single source of truth. Hypertask essentially tries to fix that with several mechanisms that were used. We tried to fix the actual task-based communication. At its core, it's just basically a Kanban board with a really powerful inbox. I believe that not having a proper inbox is essentially the reason why people abandon project management tools and go revert back to Slack and discuss in there. Whereas if you have an inbox like Hypertask has, which offers several features that make conversing in the tasks a lot more comfortable and a lot better, people tend to stick with that inbox. And we've seen that work out in large teams where we basically shifted most of the communication from Slack into this inbox. So if you look at this inbox here, this is my actual production inbox. There are several things that we're doing. So first of all, you have automatic splits. These splits you do not need to create. They're automatically created for you. So you have a split for important, you have a split for mentionings, you have a split for the updates, and then you have a split per project. This obviously enables you to work in silos. So if you're like me, where you're kind of like balancing several projects at once, you can see we have here the Control B sidebar, or Command B if you're on Mac, which gives you an overview of how many boards I'm actually working in. But you can also see it from the splits up here. So I'm working in several projects during my day. And this is probably true for most professionals. If you're working in a company, you usually handle several projects. The idea of Hypertask here is, let me just go back to the board with G then T, is to basically have a board per project. So similar to how you would do it in Trello, you have boards, and then in these boards, you also have views, right? But obviously, in all of these projects, there's a lot of communication. So we basically sort that through the splits for you. Handling the inbox, you can completely do with keyboard shortcuts. J and K goes up and down. You can do things like Control A to mark everything, or you can Shift mark things. So you can also bulk edit things. You can bulk archive, you can bulk defer, right? So that you can have these tasks coming back tomorrow. And this is really the core idea here, is to basically triage by importance, but also by projects. And basically get to a point where you can do inbox zero realistically every day for your internal communication. The whole idea with this is that external communication, you have obviously tools like Outlook, Gmail, Superhuman, all these premium email clients to communicate outwardly, sometimes even inwardly, but like obviously most of the time people communicate outward. So, but if you're in product or any sort of department that focuses mostly internally, you obviously do not have a powerful inbox. If you go to Notion, if you go to Trello, if you go, I guess Asana and Linear have decent inboxes, but their inboxes are still kind of like an add-on to the core project management tool. Whereas with us, we basically have a basic Kanban board, a really powerful inbox, and then we also add AI functions to sort of like aid the communication. Because we believe communication is essentially everything when it comes to speeding up your projects that you work on. Essentially, what we're doing is we're basically treating tasks like we're treating emails, right? So essentially, what I do here is just press enter to go to the actual task, and you will see that the task already scrolls down for me. This is actually a setting that we have in the sidebar. So you can essentially determine if you want things to scroll to the bottom, if they don't scroll at all, or only when you're coming from the inbox, right? So essentially, I have it on the most aggressive setting where it always scrolls down to the bottom right away. And this is mostly because, as you can see, I'm actively communicating with a dev here in this task. So I don't need to see the task description every time. I just basically want to see the latest comment. So, and then to basically reply to him, you can see we indicate the shortcut to fast reply essentially, which is simply done with Control M, and then I can just write, or I can dictate. Control Shift D in this case activates dictation. Please keep me posted. We also have a / menu to activate various functions that allow you to write more efficiently. speeding up and improving communication is something that basically is persistent all throughout the functions of hypertasks. So, for example, the dictation that I have here, it's not just Control-Shift-D, but you can also do Control-Shift-F, which is essentially a dictation function which strips sort of what you're saying of your ramblings and only leaves the essence intact. But it also makes it more readable by adding bullet points, bolding, and other elements that make it more readable. So yeah, as you can see, this is what Control-Shift-F does. It essentially strips out what the things you said that were essentially wrong. Another thing that we do here before I send this off is we essentially allow AI to be a part of that communication really seamlessly. Let me show you what I mean. So what I can do is I can invoke basically what we call the AI coworker. It's called Hyper AI, and I can just basically prompt whatever I would prompt a consumer level AI here. So I could say, what would be, actually, let me dictate this. What would be a decent testing plan for this feature? So now what I do, I'm going to send that off with Control Enter. This then moves me automatically on to the next task, right? So because we basically want you to move through your tasks quickly, we essentially chose the most progressive form of this. So we move you on to the next task and already scrolled down. So you go from task to task to task. But for this purpose, I'm going to go back to the inbox with G then I, and I'm going to wait for the Hyper AI to respond to me. So now Hyper AI has gotten back to me and essentially has given me a detailed testing plan, which I appreciate. I'm going to delete this because it's obviously just a demo in a real task. But yeah, so essentially this is how I go from task to task. So here I'm now on actually a real fresh board, and I can just go to the inbox and just show you what it looks like if you reach actually inbox 0. So for that, I'm just gonna archive those to, actually let me remind me of these tasks tomorrow. Let's do 2 hours. And this is what it looks like if you hit inbox 0. So yeah, this is essentially the idea that we have behind Hypertask for the whole team to reach inbox 0, thus communicate more and more efficiently.